do you make of it? Is it a surprise that Russia is one of the worst perpetrators of this?
No, not really, Ellie. It doesn't come as much of a surprise to anybody, particularly because there have been some pretty high-profile attacks that have come out of Russia. What is interesting, though, is which countries actually feature on this top 10 list. And if we look at, obviously, the first 6, we look at Russia number 1, Ukraine number 2, China number 3, which surprised me because I would have thought China would have been number 2. Then we have the United States, then we have Nigeria, and we have Romania as the sort of top 5, if you like. Or 6. And in terms of the types of threats, this survey's been very, very cleverly put together, and they've been very diligent about who they've utilised, because the one thing that we know about cybercrime is that you can conceal your origin, your location, by using things like virtual private networks. And you can't simply go on data such as who's been prosecuted, what legal cases have been brought, and therefore you have to look at those that are the poachers turned gamekeepers, if you like, who've operated in that murky sort of grey area between legitimate and non-legitimate cyber operations.
When we talk about cybercrime, are we eliminating, are we looking at a completely different area to government-related attacks? Because obviously you sort of think, China as a government, they've got almost like entire villages set up as sort of cyber attack centres, haven't they? Is that an entirely different thing when we look at this index?
Not necessarily. Excuse me. You have a lot of the states that will use proxies. So they'll use private sort of individuals or small groups to actually carry out some of the attacks on their behalf. So if you're looking at something like a distributed denial of service, a DDoS as we know them, which is where they will bombard a website, it could be a government website, it could be a trade website, and they'll take it down. They may use sort of proxies to do that. So they won't necessarily have their own government cybercrime units, because it also gives them plausible deniability. And they can say, this was nothing to do with us, these were individual actors acting on their own behalf. But the one thing that this, the survey doesn't cover, which is an emerging threat, is AI. And also something which has always been around, which is social engineering. Now, when you have technology, it could be that you were introduced to an email, an image, a file that you click on, absent-mindedly, and it downloads a virus or it downloads some sort of ransomware to your device. Where we're seeing a greater emergence is in where AI is using vocal recognition, it's using vocal mimicking of, say, a member of your family or someone that you believe to be your bank, or it could be a family member that may try to extort from you. And then there's the traditional social engineering. There's a great book, if any of the viewers want to read, called The Art of Intrusion by a chap called Kevin Mitnick, where he talks about where individuals call up with confidence and speak to you. And you have an actual dialogue with these individuals. And where we're becoming more distrusting of technology, when we hear a voice, a human voice, we can, if they sound confident enough and they sound knowledgeable enough about who we are, what our account is, we're more likely to be duped into being scammed.
And you can understand that. It's getting very sophisticated, isn't it? How aware do you think UK businesses and government departments are about this level of cyber crime, and how prepared are we for breaches?
We're really well prepared. In this country, incredibly well prepared. GCHQ is constantly battling the onslaught of cyber attacks which come into this country, and particularly for our infrastructure. So there are concerns about certainly things like Internet of Things, and the more reliant that we are on these things to hold our lives. And if you think about this, this contains everything. This contains our finance, it contains our family numbers, our business, our social identity. This provides the entire tapestry of who our personalities are and how we live our lives. So, I know a lot of people who are moving back to the good old Nokia analog phones because they want to disconnect to a certain extent. But you can't beat, as I was saying to some of your other guests this morning, you can't beat a good old face-to-face like we're having right now.
No. Well, that's true, and a lot of people will agree. There were so many people who go, you're absolutely right, Will. But it's a modern age. Yeah. And it doesn't happen, does it? Well, not to the same extent.
Here's a question I can ask both of you, Stephen and Ellie. Could you, off the top of your head, recall the telephone numbers for the 3 most important people in your lives?
No.
Yes.
Oh, could you?
Yeah. But then I'm a bit of a geek with things like that.
Yeah, he's a bit of a geek, don't ask him.
I certainly agree most people wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, you see, and this is our reliance on technology. Yes, I do. I purposely do it because for the simple reason is, if you forget your phone collapses on you or it dies on you. And the thing is, we can't always rely on these. I mean, if you have an Apple phone, for example, and you have automatic updates set for your software, how many times have you been on there and it hasn't updated it? It will tell you there's an update. So there's still a huge reliance on us as human beings to manage these devices. And the same thing with our telephone numbers. Because if you lose that number, and you want to call your fiancé or you want to call your partner, and you don't memorise that number, you're in a very tricky spot, aren't you?
Oh, I've got some homework to do.
Yeah, I've got some homework to do.
I'll start memorising.
I'll tell you what, it does frighten me, though, that let's say, the governments, businesses, all the rest of it, but as individuals, it's constant. What we're getting now, messages from companies we've never heard of that we're supposedly on the subscribe list for, tweets of phone calls and dead phone calls. It never ends.
No, it never ends. And the thing we've got to always rely on, and this is something I say that prevails across the security industry, and security advice that I give to anybody is trust your instincts, trust your gut. So when you get that email that comes through, the one thing that they're always looking to do is to get an emotive reaction out of you, to get you to panic, to get you to respond without thinking. So it could be, your bank account's being frozen, your family member's in trouble, and you're immediately, and you won't necessarily think pragmatically and logically. Just take a deep breath for 10 seconds, have a look at it, and think about whether you should click on that link, download that file, or open that picture.
Yeah. Okay. Very good advice, Will. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Will.